Let's zoom in and ambush her cheating ass. Chris, what are you doing at home? Asked Angela, my wife of 28 years. She just walked in the door and saw me sitting at our kitchen table, less than 10 feet away. Her body partially blocked the tall young man who followed her into our house. As always, Angela is wonderful. Her brown hair falls to her shoulders. She always dresses professionally for work. Today she is wearing a white blouse. I noticed she had an extra button undone, and the cleavage between her impressive breasts was delicious. Her black linen skirt showed off her world-class legs, and her 3-inch heels made the delicious cheeks of her ass fill out the back of the skirt to perfection. I quickly thought about Angie's stupid question and answered just as stupidly, "I live here." The quick burst of irritation that had become increasingly common over the last few weeks surfaced as she spat out, "Of course you live here. What I want to know is why are you home at 3:30 in the afternoon? I jokingly tell anyone who will listen that I have loved Angela since we first met. I had an appointment with the management of her company, and Angela was their administrative assistant. She met me in the lobby and showed me to the conference room. 4 hours later, as she walked me back to the lobby, I took a chance and invited her to dinner. The rest, as they say, is history. By this time, Angie's gentleman friend had walked around her and stood next to her. I half expected him to grin, but his very intelligent eyes showed signs of concern. From the very beginning, things didn't go as planned. I guess I could ask you the same question, Angie. What are you doing at home an hour and a half early? Angela and I were connected by fate from the moment of our first date. I am proud to say that I dedicated every ounce of energy to her and our family. I worked hard and built a small but very successful insurance brokerage firm. With the help of her employer, Angela went to college and received her bachelor's degree 6 years later. She moved from a support position to human resources. She eventually became head of human resources in the company's Hartford, Connecticut office. I loved Angela unconditionally for almost 3 decades. As I sat there, looking at the monster she had become over the past few weeks, I forced myself to calm down. I wanted to break her as effectively as she had broken me when I discovered she was a lying, cheating slut. When I gave Angie my signature crooked grin, she replied, "We came home early to talk to you." "We?" I asked, looking Angie straight in the eye. The asshole took the opportunity to introduce himself. He stepped forward, extended his hand, and said confidently, "Mr. Harrington." "Chris." "I'm Michael Browner. I'm a new attorney at Kellerman & Son and have been working closely with Ange for the past couple of months." Still looking down at Angie, I ignored his outstretched hand. I cringed with a primal instinct to jump up, wrap my hands around his worthless neck, and squeeze until his eyes popped out of his skull. Instead, I growled, "I know exactly who and what you are." For the first time, I saw signs of anxiety in my wife, and then she cringed as I continued. "Ange, you threatened to cut off the reproductive organs of the last person who called you Ange? Why are you being so disrespected in your own home by this pile of crap?" I pointed at asshole. Angie looked worried and confused. As is her habit, she plans everything very carefully. I was sure that she and the jerk had planned every possible contingency for this conversation. Everything was sorted into pieces in her mind. In her mind, I was already an obedient cuckold. A quick glance in asshole's direction made me smile. I was absolutely sure that the muscles of his sphincter had tensed and would soon be compressed into a knot, an equally tight rope. A shit show is coming, and it's going to be completely different from anything Angie and her boy toy could ever imagine. I took 2 or 3 deep cleansing breaths and tried to push down the rage and disgust that was growing in the quiet corner of my heart. Let's get this over with, I thought to myself. It's time to confuse them again. Why don't I make 3 drinks? I suggested. We can talk in the living room. A glass of wine, please, Angie asked quietly. When I turned to Butt, he seemed wary. He responded to my proposal by saying, Angela told me that you like bourbon and craft beer. I nodded and told him, yes, and stood up from the kitchen table and walked toward the bar in our living room. As I left the room, I immediately heard an urgent whisper as they moved in the opposite direction. through the kitchen and into the living room. A few minutes later, I met them in the living room. They sat together on the sofa. I handed Angie a glass of her favorite Merlot and Donkey a dirty glass full of amber beer. I took my 2-inch bourbon and sat down in the chair across from them. Raising my glass in greeting, I took a small sip of the scalding liquid. Returning the toast, Asshole took a sip of beer. He held the glass in front of him and seemed to be studying the color of the drink. He commented, "This beer has the most incomprehensible taste of all that I have ever tried. What is this?" "Pabst Blue Ribbon," I answered. Asshole's eyes flashed with anger, and Angie looked confused and asked, "Is this the beer you said was worse than donkey urine and the shittiest beer ever made?" She was halfway through her question when she saw me laughing. She exploded. "You're such an asshole. We came home to talk calmly with you, and you only behaved rudely and condescendingly." I smiled and asked, "Am I an asshole? Rude and condescending?" "I think we really need to start your conversation. I am confident that I will soon learn how to have a polite, inspiring, and loving conversation with my ever-faithful wife." Angie cowered and couldn't meet my gaze. "Chris, we came here to discuss everything." I interrupted him and told him, "You did everything right the first time." "I'm sorry?" He looked embarrassed, as idiots often do. "When you first approached me, you called me Mr. Harrington, before presumptuously calling me Chris. I much prefer it. In fact, I insist. You call me Mr. Harrington." When his face began to turn red, I finished with a shrug and said, "Or the Honorable Sir." Instead of letting Asshole continue, I turned to Angie and asked, "What do you want to talk about?" When the jerk looked like he was about to answer, I said, "I'm talking to my wife, idiot. Just sit there, drink your amber donkey piss, and shut the fuck up." Angie was furious and exploded. "Your behavior is disgusting. I want this to stop now." I nodded and seemed to consider her request. I asked, "Do you think my behavior is better or worse than your behavior over the last 5 or 6 weeks?" "What are you talking about?" Angie was half confused and half worried. Ass seemed to be holding his breath, waiting for my answer. I guess he was convinced that their carefully laid plan had gone off the rails. Looking Angie straight in the eyes, I told her, "I don't know what infuriates me more. That you had sex with that asshole, or that you treat me like an idiot?" The stunned look on Angela's face was priceless. Her eyes narrowed, and in a hushed voice, she asked the obvious, "How do you know? It looks like I have more friends in your office than you." 2 weeks ago, I received an anonymous letter from one of your colleagues. The letter said you were having an affair, and there were 3 attachments that showed you and Asshole at a picnic in Middlewoods Park. The photos were full of handshakes and kisses. "I'm sorry you had to find out about it this way." Angie was trying to decide how to proceed when I interrupted and asked, "So you want a divorce?" "No." She slid onto the edge of the sofa, leaned forward, rested her elbows on her knees, and said passionately, "I love you and don't want a divorce. What Michael and I are having is a short-term fling. He's new to Connecticut and hasn't made many friends. Once he gets settled, I'm sure he'll find himself a permanent girlfriend." "I'm very sorry, but this doesn't work for me. I signed up for a monogamous relationship with a loving wife. Instead, I discovered that the woman I had dedicated my life to was a slut. Divorce suits my future plans much better." Angela begged, "Chris, just stop. I don't want a divorce, and I don't think you want it either. This is a one-time affair, nothing more. I was attracted to Michael and wanted a little extra excitement in my life. This has never happened before. It will end soon and will never happen again. I promise." I took a small sip of my bourbon and sat quietly for a few moments before answering. "First of all, your promises make no sense. Everyone in this room knows you're a lying slut." Angela was ready to explode when I started talking about her and said, "And secondly, why should I believe that this is your first novel? I think this is your 51st. Please, you need to stop and think. We worked together to build our family, and now that Kelly is married, we can slow down and plan for a wonderful retirement in a few years. My affair with Mikhail would be long over and forgotten by then. I stood up and, without asking if anyone else wanted a drink, went into the office and refilled my glass. I was sure that my bad manners had not escaped the attention of the two idiots in the living room. They were huddled together and whispering when I returned. "Can I say something, Mr. Harrington?" asked the asshole. "Come on," I replied with disgust. He collected his thoughts before saying, "Angela is right. Our relationship is just a short-term fling. I regret engaging a married woman in an affair. I've never done this before, but we got along. As you know, she is an amazing woman. Your threat of divorce, although understandable in the heat of the moment, will prove unwise in the long run. You've spent decades together. Don't throw it away." Angela was initially worried that the prenuptial agreement her father made you sign would result in her losing many of her assets in a divorce if we were caught. I can assure you, as a lawyer, that an almost 30-year-old agreement can be easily overturned. Laws change. The legal language is becoming outdated. Any competent lawyer will laugh at the document outside of court. But more importantly, you need ironclad proof of infidelity. Other than some mild, innocent public flirting that some of our partners may have seen, I am confident that you do not have the evidence needed to enforce the agreement. When he finished his glowing legal resume, I wondered how my wife had become so stupid. Turning to Angela, I asked, "I can't understand why you would seek legal advice from a corporate lawyer who graduated in the last quarter of his class from Texas Southern University School of Law. Texas Southern ranks among the top 10 worst law schools in the country year after year." "How do you know?" The idiot didn't finish when I replied, "One of my many mottos is, know your enemy." I continued, turning my attention back to Angela. "What's your plan, Angie?" She took a few minutes to think about it before she told me, "Michael and I are going to spend the weekend together. I'll stay at his apartment tonight, and we'll leave for New York in the morning. We'll stay in town tomorrow and Saturday night, and I'll be home on Sunday." Even though I knew their exact plans, the sheer audacity of my cheating wife's statement ripped my heart out of my chest. I hoped she would notice the crushing sadness in my eyes when I asked, "So, not only are you sharing your slut body with this piece of shit, but you're also going to share our quarterly weekend with him?" We went to New York 4 times a year, every year since we got married. Memories of all the exciting places we've seen together, award-winning Broadway plays, concerts, and sporting events. You destroyed all thousands of touching memories. I don't know what happened, Angie, but you've become just as much a piece of crap as that asshole. I obviously meant jerk. Angela could see that I was devastated and responded accordingly. I didn't hear a word she said because the voices in my head were screaming, "Stop it! Damn it! End it now!" Looking at the very worried jerk, I asked, "Is your wife okay with you having sex with my wife?" "Christopher, stop. Michael is a widower. His wife died several years ago from cancer. He never cheated on his wife." Even the jerk had the decency to cringe at my wife's last statement. I grinned and said to Angela, "Unlike you," I immediately continued and asked, "This is true? Are you a widower?" He quickly looked from Angie to me and back again and said hesitantly, "Yes." I leaned over and pulled out a folder from my backpack lying on the floor next to my chair. I opened the folder, looked at the first page, and read, "Dr. Cynthia Browner, Emergency Department Surgeon, Ascension St. John's Hospital, Detroit. Husband Michael, daughters Katie, 11, and Lacey, 9. Dr. Browner applied for her current position effective June 22nd and will move to Hartford, Connecticut to join her husband immediately after her children graduate from high school. She will serve in a similar position at St. Francis Hospital and Medical Center in Hartford. If I weren't so terribly unhappy with my marriage, I would have laughed hysterically at the look on Angela's face. "You lied to me?" She definitely wanted to know. I couldn't help it. I laughed. "Can you imagine?" I roared. "A deceiver and a liar lies to a deceiver and a liar. What is this world coming to?" Michael reached out and took Angela's hand. Before I could scream, "Get your fucking hands off my wife," I realized I just didn't care. "Ange, baby, I'm sorry. I lied." I couldn't help it. You are so sexy and beautiful. I wanted you and needed you, and I lied to get you. He stood up, still holding her hand. Let's come back to me and talk. Tomorrow we'll go to New York and have a great weekend. When we return, we will still have 3 weeks before my family arrives. Then you can again be a full-fledged wife, and I will be a full-fledged husband and father. Angela considered her options for a few moments before standing up. She took his hand and turned to me. After this weekend, I promise to completely abandon Michael. I'll come home on Sunday and be the same loving wife I've always been. Angie and I looked at each other for a moment. I wondered if she could hear my already broken heart continuing to break. I sat here quite politely while you both had a chance to tell me about your crush and how it wouldn't affect my relationship with Angie in the long run. I would like to ask you both to sit down and give me about 30 minutes of time to outline the changes that I see happening. They looked at each other, then at me, silently trying to decide what to do. I asked this question and said, "The least you can do is give me 30 minutes of your time." They sat down reluctantly. "I've set up some Zoom meetings for us," I told them, pointing the remote at the TV and pressing a few buttons. I have become an expert in organizing online Zoom meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic. When the TV screen lit up, I asked, "Peter, Lou, can you hear me?" I spoke to 2 faces on the screen. "We hear, Chris," Peter answered. I continued, "Angie, you obviously know our family lawyer, Peter. I'd like to introduce you to his partner and my new divorce lawyer, Lou Baird. Gentlemen, I would also like to introduce you to corporate attorney extraordinaire, Michael Browner." Angie and Ass were stunned as I continued. "Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Mrs. Harrington, I am representing your husband in his upcoming divorce. The documents were filed in court this afternoon. I would greatly appreciate it if you would hire an attorney and arrange to obtain the documents in person. I'll give you until the end of the day on Monday. If I do not hear from your attorney, we will hire a process server and serve you. We filed for divorce using infidelity as the reason. We have a private investigator's report that documented in great detail, using audio, visual, and telecommunications evidence, your sexual encounter with Mr. Browner." As Lou finished his final statement, I dropped the second folder on the coffee table in front of Angie. A loud smack made both idiots jump. "This is a copy of our divorce petition, including the private investigator's report," I told the stunned couple. While Shithead was reaching for the folder, Angie looked at the screen again. "We will insist that the marriage contract be fully respected. I know that you are aware that every 2 years all of your family's business and personal legal matters are reviewed. As part of this review, the prenuptial agreement was revised to be consistent with current state legal guidelines. Since we have your signed and notarized signature for every renewal for the last 28 years, I am 100% confident that the prenuptial agreement is completely enforceable. As a result of a vote taken last night by the board of directors of the Harrington Brokerage Company, you are relieved of all corporate duties and are no longer associated in any way with Mr. Harrington's firm. You will have 7 days to return your vehicle to the company. Your company's credit cards have been paid off and canceled. Your mobile phone will be canceled after 7 days. Your Cedar Mountain Country Club and LA Fitness memberships are canceled. We also paid off and canceled 3 joint credit cards that you shared with my client. We have frozen your joint savings, checking, and retirement funds. Under the prenuptial agreement, we expect an 80-20% division of cash and other assets to Mr. Harrington. As per the agreement, Mr. Harrington will keep your house free and clean. We have asked the court to expedite your eviction. Since you have a home that you sometimes shared with Mr. Browner, we would argue that it is easier for you to move. We ask the court to immediately grant Mr. Harrington full ownership and give you 30 days to remove your personal property from the home. You won't get any alimony, and obviously, child support doesn't matter. There are many small claims that my client made. Your lawyer will be able to explain them to you. Chris, did I miss anything? You hit all the main points, Lou. Thank you. The TV screen immediately went dark. Just as quickly, Angie jumped to her feet and screamed, "Wait!" She looked at me and said, "Give them back. I have some questions." I laughed and said, "That's not how it works, Angie. You will need to hire your own lawyer to get answers." "You bastard!" Angie growled. "I'm going to fucking destroy you." With a grin, I looked at her accomplice and asked, "Hey, idiot, what does your almost genius legal mind tell you that this bitch is going to ruin me in a divorce?" His silence made Angela lean back on the couch and curl into a ball. My smile was probably from ear to ear. I simply picked up the TV remote and waved it in front of her before pointing it at the TV. When the second Zoom meeting started, I asked, "Jake, can you hear me?" "Hello, Chris. I have a conference call that I need to go to, so this will be quick. Browner, you are fired, effective immediately. Your personal items will be removed from your office and placed in a box in the lobby. If they are not claimed within 24 hours, they will be thrown away. You will not receive recommendations." Angela. I heard her boss slow down and sigh. I looked at Angie and saw that she was shaking. She was scared to death. "I can't express how disappointed I am. Your behavior as a senior leader is inexcusable. However, 29 years of exemplary service must be taken into account. Your position in Hartford has been eliminated. I am offering you the same position at our facility in Albany, New York. You have a week to decide whether you will accept the transfer and 30 days to move to Albany. If you disagree, you are fired." The screen went dark again as Angie cried into her hands and Butt sat back on the couch. I grinned at the jerk on purpose. When he saw me, his rage began to rise. He was younger, bigger, and probably stronger. Unfortunately for him, he was as stupid as a bag of rocks. When the asshole was ready to explode, I waved the remote again, pointed it at the TV, and pressed the button. The screen lit up and I asked, "Dr. Browner, can you hear me?" The asshole and Angie sat in stunned silence. They were white, like ghosts, and their mouths were open. The face of a beautiful blonde appeared on the screen. "I asked you to call me Cynthia." "Sorry, Cynthia. The idiot is yours." "Michael, I filed for divorce. Expect to be served within the next few days. The children and I will stay in Michigan. I was able to maintain my current position at the hospital." The idiot started begging, "Cynthia, please, we can work things out." It was just a fling. The face on the screen expressed disgust. "I've been checking on a few things since Chris contacted me. This is the third job you've lost because you couldn't keep your worthless tool in your pants." After I received the private investigator's report, I contacted him and asked him to do more digging. Everyone was staring at the screen as Cynthia continued. "Mrs. Harrington, do you know Alice Packer? More likely. Tori Jones? Candy Phillips?" When Angie didn't answer, Cynthia laughed and said, "I really don't expect an answer. The question was rhetorical. I know that they are all your colleagues. Did you know that Mikhail had affairs with each of them? Can you imagine it? You were just one of his many sluts. Tell me where to send your shit, Mikhail. You are not welcome in my house." When the screen went black again, Ass yelled, "I'll kill you, idiot!" He struggled to his feet as I pulled my Colt 45 from under the chair cushion and pointed the monster at him. The asshole looked like he was going to throw up, and that was exactly the look I wanted. "You have two options, asshole. You can leave, or you can sit down and shut the fuck up. I don't care what you do, but if you attack me, I'll shoot you a left ball." I'm not sure if I was completely happy that he sat down again, but I was grateful that I would be able to have my last scheduled Zoom meeting. I looked at Angie. She was pale, tears were streaming down her cheeks, and mascara was smudged around her eyes. She looked terrible. "I've been seeing a psychologist for the last 2 weeks. Angie moaned and cried into her palm. "It's quite funny. You're cheating, lying, and having sex with this asshole. And I need a mental health professional." I laughed and said, after I told Dr. Waters our story, she asked me a question that helped me a lot. She asked, "Do you understand the old saying, 'Love is blind'?" Not an anonymous letter. My love was so strong that it didn't notice your warts. Hell, in my eyes, you didn't have warts. I hope you know that you will never find anyone who loves you as much as I do. Angie continued to cry and rock back and forth on the couch. "I will continue to see Dr. Waters." I think it's very important to have someone you can trust with your deepest thoughts and feelings, especially after such a devastating event. I never would have thought that someone I loved so much could humiliate and disrespect me to such an extent. But the good news is that I will survive the pain and humiliation, just like I will survive you. I told Dr. Waters about my plan for today. She's not a big fan of Revenge, but she thought the first 3 meetings with Zoom were okay. She thought you deserved some kind of payback. She actually tried to talk me out of our next Zoom meeting. She thought the pain it would cause me might set me back a few steps in my personal recovery. I've thought about this, and I admit that Dr. Wilson is probably right. My next Zoom meeting will do me more harm than good. But I do not care. This next meeting will hurt me, but it will cripple you. The 4th time I picked up the remote and waved it at Angie, she leaned back on the couch in a panic. I pointed it at the TV and pressed the button. All eyes were glued to the screen, and when the face appeared, Angie groaned, "Oh no, please God, oh no." "I love you, Dad," said my daughter Kelly. "I love you too, honey." "Why?" Angie squealed. "How can you treat me so badly?" "I heard everything, Mom. I've heard every word you and your stupid boyfriend have said for the last hour. I heard what you did and what you planned to do. You disgust me, Mom. Darling, please, this is a very difficult situation. You're too young to understand." Angela's breath caught in her throat as Kelly responded. "Fuck you, Mom. I am 26 years old. I am a happily married woman. Your situation is not complicated. This is grotesque on the one hand and pathetic on the other. I don't know what has changed, but you are selfish and completely self-absorbed." Angela breathed deeply, pleading, "Kelly? Babe, I've been so lonely since you left. I felt like I was living in a fog. I missed you so much." Kelly's face on the screen looked puzzled. "So you want to say, Mom, that it's my fault that you became a liar, a deceiver, and a slut, crushed Dad, and are going to continue cheating on him?" "No, this is not what I said, and you know it." "It doesn't matter, Mom. I think we all need a break from you." "Kelly!" Angela shouted. "I'll come to Boston this weekend and we can talk. I'm so sorry this happened. I need to be with my baby." "This won't work, Mom, for 2 reasons. First, you'll be in New York having sex with your worthless, unemployed, recently divorced boyfriend." "I'm not going to New York," Angela insisted. "And secondly, Scott and I planned a small private celebration for our family and closest friends. We rented a place closer to Cape Cod." "Babe? Oh, baby, what are you celebrating? Since you're not invited, it's none of your business. On another note, I'm 3 months pregnant, and I'm having a girl in February. Kellyanne, I'm your mother, and I insist that you invite me." "This won't happen, Mom. I want my special party to be filled with love and happiness, and not the lies, deception, and disrespect that are so much in your current life. Goodbye, Mom." For the 4th time, the screen went blank. While Angela sat and cried, I rose to my feet and tucked the gun into the waistband of my pants. "I'm going to have dinner and will be back in 2 hours. Looking at Angela, I said, "Please pack clothes and other essentials. You will not be allowed back into the house until the court responds to my petition for divorce." I was told it would take a week. Looking at Govnyuk, I said, "You've seen what I'm capable of. I'm giving you 3 days to leave the state. If you're still here on Monday, I'll cripple you in a much more literal sense." Opening the front door, I looked back at the completely defeated scammers and said, "Have a nice weekend in New York. Both days should be wonderful days." Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.